Hello friends, welcome to Dr.RAjeshverma's YouTube channel. In this particular video, we'll be discussing something about the introductory part of the psychophysics. It's a very important discipline of psychology and it's a very scientific discipline and it's a wide range of applications as far as our life is concerned. So let us move and we'll be starting with the meaning of psychophysics. As its name suggests, the word psychophysics is made up of psychology and physics. So two important disciplines. One deals with the physical aspects of everything and other the psychology that deals with your behavioral aspect. So the combination of these two is a new discipline. We call it as a psychophysics. Now, psychology has a vast study material or human behavior or various components, various variables to study. Perception, learning, problem solving, your intelligence, and so forth and so on. But what are the important components or the disciplines of psychology that are used in psychophysics? Basically, or specifically, there are two major components that are studied in psychophysics. That is your sensation and perception. Whereas in physics, physics too has a vast scope, vast subject base. Thus, the only thing just which has been picked up from the physics for including in the psychophysics is the physical properties of a stimulus, the aspects of the environment or the various informations that are traveling to your brain. The physical aspects of that brain or that stimuli is being studied in the psychophysics. So, in brief, psychophysics means studying the relationship between psychological phenomena and physical properties of a stimulus. True thing. There has to be some relationship between your psychological phenomena and the physical properties of stimulus. So, what is the relation between that? So, if you want to know that, then you have to go for the psychophysics. You have to study the psychophysics because psychophysics always studies the relation between the psychological phenomena and the physical properties of stimulus. Now let us define. Although the definitions are, you might be clear right now what psychophysics is. So definitions are almost similar to the meaning, but still we have to define psychophysics in scientific terms. The branch of psychological science that study relationship between psychological phenomena and the physical properties of a stimulus. It's a very simple definition. Now let us move to the standardized definitions given by the NCERT. In his 11th class psychology book, NCERT defines the relationship between stimuli and the sensations they evoke has been studied in a discipline called psychophysics. Here the very important point that has been added in the definition of NCERT is that the stimulus that evokes the sensation, those sensations and the relationship of those sensations with the physical properties of the stimulus that is responsible for those sensations is being studied in psychophysics. This is a little bit difference in the general definition and the definition given by the NCERT. Now let us go for the one more, a little bit different type of definition of psychophysics. This is I taken from the Wikipedia. You also can check out and you can read from there too. That is given by the Bruce et al. In 1966. So what they say, the analysis of perceptual processes by studying the effect on subject's experience of behavior of systematically varying the properties of a stimulus along one or more physical dimensions. See, it's a little bit of technical definition, carries lots of analogies. You say they try to cover maximum concept of psychophysics within this definition. That's why it becomes a little bit of typical. But let me explain you what they want to say. Take a stimulus rather. Every stimulus has its physical dimensions. So the systematic variation in these physical dimensions of this stimulus. This is a one important point. So that variation automatically influences your cognitive domain. It means influences your perceptual and sensory process. There are 2 points. Then comes that sensory process or your perceptual process directly influence your behavior. So analysis of that behavior or that experience or that perceptual process is the psychophysics. Now, sometimes it becomes a little bit difficult for us to combine all these things in a and understood or understand that. Let me take an example for you and explain you with that example. Suppose there is a sound box. You offer a sound, a particular decibel sound to an individual and ask, can you hear it? Now, these are three things working. The physical property, that is sound, is a physical stimulus that is traveling to your brain, that is sensory process. Then you are understanding the meaning of a sound. What does it mean? Whether it is there or not. The moment you say yes or no, this is your behavior. Getting my point? So these are three things in combination as said by the Bruce et al. The second time you systematically change the or vary the that property of a sound. Means suppose earlier you are hearing a sound of 5 decibels, for example. Now next you make it a 7 decibels. Next time you make it as a 9 decibel, then 11 decibels. So what is that? This means the proportionate increasing. That is not proportionate, equal increasing. That is first 5, 7, 9, 11. That is always true. Increasing of 2 decibels. So this is known as systematic varying of the physical property of the stimulus. So what is that systematic variation, rather I can say, influences your perception, sensory process and consequently your behavior and experience. So analysis of this is known as psychophysics. So this is the a little bit of a comprehensive definition I could find on the internet and other books that you say attracted my attention. So I just put up in front of you. So these are the meaning and definition of psychophysics. So by that time you might have got some idea of what psychophysics is. Now little bit of discuss some introductory part of that or historical part. The term psychophysics was coined by the Gustav Theodor Fechner in 1860 to describe mathematically the relationship between body and mind. So it's a very interesting phenomena he liked to study. He was a German physicist and philosopher who used this in a book named as a Elements of Psychophysics. The book was originally written in German language. So in that book he mentioned, now it is widely available in English language and other languages too, where in that book he mentioned the word psychophysics. Now, prior to his work, that is on the psychophysics, while working at Leipzig University, this is the same university where the first experimental psychology lab was established by the Wilhelm Wundt in 1879. At the same university, Ernst Heinrich Weber proposed the concept of J&D, just noticeable difference. He arrived at that concept based upon the senses of touch and sight, which is now commonly known as, referred as Weber's law. The image is in front of you. These are gentlemen Weber. These are the two, Fechner and Weber. The Fechner image was in the, you can see the previous slide, just you can see once again. This is the gentleman philosopher or the psychologist or the physicist Fechner, and here you can find Weber. So they are the two gentlemen who saw the seed of the psychophysics. Rather, we can say on the studies, on the work of these two people, that modern science of psychophysics is studying. So Now, what is Weber's law? Various people find it a little bit difficult to understand that. No, not worry, I am here for you to explain that. It states that the amount required to produce JND is a constant proportion of the value of the original stimulus or reference intensity. So there is only one sentence that explains the Weber's law. Two, three things. First, I'll explain what are the terms used in that, and then I'll take an example from your daily life, and I'll explain that what Weber's law is. First point is JND, just noticeable difference. JND can be referred to as 2 points. I'll in the incoming slide also we'll discuss the JND in detail. JND means the amount of change of value of the stimulus that is capable enough to make you differentiate between the two stimuli. Getting my point? Then comes the constant proportion. The proportion has to be constant with the original value of the stimulus. Let us take an example for that. Suppose you are given a particular limit or particular amount of smell, something you are asked to smell. Or let us take a simple example of a taste. You are given a glass of water mixed with 50 granules of sugar. Now, after that, you are being asked to taste it, and you say, yes, it's a little bit sweet. Then, again, you are given a glass of water with 70 granules of sugar. Again, you are asked to taste it. You say, you've been asked to, is it the difference? There is a taste difference between the previous glass of water and this glass of water. If you say yes, it is there. This means the minimum amount. This is example, dear friends. This is a hypothetical example. The minimum amount to differentiate between the two stimuli means taste of the two glass of water is 20 granules. Getting my point? So this is your J&D, just noticeable difference. Now what Weber's law says? Now it comes here. Suppose you take a glass of water and mix 500 granules of sugar in a glass of water. Now to differentiate between this glass of water that contains 500 granules, how much granules you require to pour in another glass of water, or you can say how much to find the J and D. Is it again 50 or is it again 100? But Weber's law here states that it has to be 200, because to make 50 from 50 to 70, the difference between granules is 20. Similarly, the difference between 500 700, it has to be 200. Means if you add 200 granules in the glass of water that contains 500 granules, then only you will be able to differentiate between the two glass of water. This is the Weber's law. I think you got it, but still if you have any problem, you just simply write in my comment box, or you can email me at vamasujit@yahoo.com. Certainly I'll reply to that. Next comes the concept of modern psychophysics is based on the work of Weber and Fechner, which I told you earlier. In psychophysics, the intensity of a stimuli that activates the five senses are objectively quantified. This is a very important statement as far as psychophysics is concerned. Means the physical properties or intensity of the stimuli are quantified objectively with the help of psychophysics or in the domain of psychophysics. Now, the two important concepts which are most commonly used in the psychophysics, or they form the base of psychophysics. The first one is absolute threshold, or we call it a absolute limit, or we call it a detection threshold. What is that? The minimum amount, intensity, value, or weight of the stimulus to get noticed or perceived by the human sensory system. It's a very important point. This is known as your absolute threshold. What does it mean? Let us take an example. Let us take the same example. You take a glass of water, just you add one granule of a salt. Does it make a sense? Does it make a difference between on the taste of the water? Just one grain of a salt, it doesn't make it salty. So what you do is you keep adding that. So you keep on adding that granules. There is a stage comes where people say yes, it's a salty. So that is the number of count the granules. Suppose it takes 48 granules to make the glass of water salty. So 48 is the absolute threshold for that particular taste. So that is known as your absolute lemon or absolute threshold. Now, what is the important point here? See, the psychological concept or variables such as your taste, all are subjective in nature. Subjective, understand? Means you experience, your experience remains with you. It doesn't mean that I am going to experience the same thing with the same stimulus. That is known as subjectivity. So absolute threshold or absolute lemon varies across individuals and situations, depending upon various psychophysical and situational factors. So this is important point here. This is the beauty of psychophysics. I let you know. Suppose I told you in the previous example, 48 granules of salt make the water salty for me. But it is not compulsory or necessary that it will apply to you also. Getting my point? There may be, you may like to eat less salt. There may be a chance where 42 grains of salt makes you feel water salty. Or there are some people that who consume more salt, then require 58 or 100 grains of salt. There is differentiation. But now important point comes here. Then how do we set the absolute threshold or AL? Do not worry. These psychophysics intelligent one, they set a criteria for that. And that criteria is, so to measure the absolute lemon or the absolute threshold, the number of trials from the base. Means how much trials you take. When the stimulus is perceived correctly in 50% of total trials, then the particular intensity or value of the stimulus is referred as absolute threshold, absolute lemon. So what does it mean? Now you take a glass of water that contains 50 granules of, no, this time we'll take it as sugar. Now change our taste from salty to sweet. 50 granules of sugar. And you ask an individual to taste it and record his behavior. Then take another individual, then another. This means we take 100 people and we record their responses. Out of that 100, if 50% of people say that yes, it was salty, then we can objectively set the absolute threshold of that particular glass of water is 50 granules. Getting my point? That can also then with the same individual also. You take a glass of water, add some granules, and ask the individual to taste it. And if that individual 50% of the time that individual says that yes, there is a change in the taste of the water correctly, this means the individual 50% of time says correctly, then we can say it's a absolute threshold of or absolute limit. So this is known as your absolute threshold or absolute limit. Then comes the second important concept of the psychophysics is the differential threshold or differential limit. It is also known as the J and D that was suggested by the Weber. Just a noticeable difference. And also known as the discrimination threshold. Means that threshold, that limit, that discriminate between the intensity of the two stimuli. The smallest difference, what is J and D or what is differential threshold or DL? The smallest difference in the values of two stimuli that helps in detecting the difference between them. It's a similar thing as in the AL. Now in AL there was one stimulus. Here it is a two stimulus. You have to differentiate between the two stimuli. Means the minimum amount of change required that I told you in the previous example to detect the difference between the two stimuli. That is, if 50 granule of a salt makes water salty for you, and to change the taste of that salty water, you need to add more granules. Suppose you add 10 and you are being asked to taste both the glasses of water, and is there a difference between the two? Sometime it may be or may not be. Then how it can be? Then you take the trials. If 50% of the time the individuals say yes, there is a difference of the taste, then you say it's a JND or that a differential threshold. If it is less than 50% time, then you have to add more granules of the sugar or the salt as the case may be. In that case, your JND will be different. So dear friends, this is known as your differential threshold. Now, the methods of psychophysics. Do not worry, I'm not going to describe each method here. There is a separate topic for the methods of psychophysics. We'll discuss in that. But here we need to know what are the methods that are used to study psychophysics. To measure the relationship between intensity of stimulus and perception, Fechner developed following three methods. First one is the method of limits, method of constant stimuli, and the third one is the method of adjustment. So these are the three major methods or only classical methods that are used to study the psychophysics. Not only psychophysics, the physical properties of the stimuli. These methods are used to measure the, I told you, threshold of the intensity of the stimulus required to perceive it, which is known as the absolute threshold or absolute limit. So dear friends, this was all about introductory part of psychophysics. That means we discussed with you meaning, definition, some introductory and historical parts, and name the two gentlemen who are responsible or who developed the methods and AL and DLs, all these concepts of psychophysics, or you can say on the work of that, these two individuals, the modern psychophysics is purely based. These are my references. You can always cross-check them. And for deeper study or higher studies, my dear friends, the next thing we are going to discuss in our videos will be that is in front of you. That is problems of psychophysics, because psychophysics is science. So science always face some challenges, some issues, and some problems. So what the basic or classical problems that psychophysics faces? You wait for that video. I'll be going to discuss with you in that, and just a very important discussion. What are that problems that comes in the field of psychophysics? Dear friends, one more important point, how you like this video. If you like it, share with your friends, and if you dislike it, kindly share with me. You can share by writing in my comment box, or there's an email given in front of you, varmasujit@yahoo.com. Dear friends, thank you for watching this video.